Hello and welcome to the Business of the Business podcast. I am your co-host, JP John Paz from the two-man power trip of wrestling. Of course, joining me is the pro wrestling, financial genius himself, Mr. Lavie Margolin. Lavie, how you doing?
I'm doing good. I'm the financial genius of it all, whatever it might be the subject matter. A very special guest today, Zack Heydorn of many things in pro wrestling, not least of which his growing entrepreneurship, media empire, Brass Ring Media. But we also know him of the author as Stunning the Wrestling Artistry of Steve Austin, editor at SESCOOPS, and formerly of our friends at PW Torch. Welcome, Zack.
Oh man, thanks so much, guys, for having me. I'm excited. I've been following your work for so long, and it's a pleasure to be on the show, and looking forward to chatting with you guys.
So, Zach, just as far as just the background first, because we know what you've done with the Torch and obviously with Wrestling Media now, but where did you grow up? Like, when did you become a fan? What were you a fan of? Is sometimes by geographical location, us Northeast WWF guys originally. What about you? Like, where'd you grow up and like what were you a fan of?
So was born and bred near Chicago, Illinois. So just in the suburbs, right outside the city, about 20 minutes from downtown. So Chicago was kind of like my home base for everything, sports, culture, wrestling too. But my first kind of like deep dive into it was Attitude Era. So I am a child of the Attitude Era for sure. Steve Austin, Rock. One of the first angles that I ever saw that I remember is was Steve Austin, shoving Paul Bearer down the sewer during the feud that he had with the Undertaker. So that's like kind of what initially hooked me, and then of course throughout the years, just went further back, and watched, all of the eras previous to that, Brett and Shawn and Hogan and all that. But definitely started out as an Attitude Era guy. So, and it's funny because like you think Attitude Era, you think, or you can think like Monday Night Wars, WWF versus WCW, but Austin caught me. So I was very much like a WWF fan when I first became a fan of wrestling.
Steve Austin, that guy kind of did something in the business, made a little bit of money, a little bit of popularity.
Yeah, he was all right.
It's crazy when you look at the list of merchandise sellers for the year. Austin and the NWO are still in the top 5, top 10 every year. It's crazy.
Yeah, it's wild. I mean, they, still to this day have considerable impact. I mean, when you think about even like some of the business moves that WWE makes today to leverage like nostalgia and to leverage their history. I mean, so much of it is on the shoulders of that era this weekend. There's going to be a Scott Hall WWE biography that hits. So, I mean, like it's still so much part of their business strategy to, focus on that era and those guys. And even when they do they do good numbers. So, you can't really blame them either.
Crazy. So as far as the wrestling end, we know that, but what about the journalism end? When did you start writing and getting into that, neck of the woods?
Yeah. So that was late into my fandom, honestly, like really late, just kind of, I think just some personal things happened on my end that kind of freed up some time and, some interests waned in certain areas, and then was able to really kind of go, you know what, like I want to do something with kind of like the wrestling that I enjoy so much. And, had followed, all the guys, Wade and Dave and that crop of wrestling journalists for so long, and was like, man, like I like to write and I like to read. And so I'm going to, try my hand at this. And, it started off just kind of doing some freelance volunteer work, like around, like, can you write this piece, or do you want to freelance or cover a show for X website, or here, yes, you can write an editorial if you'd like a guest editorial. And so it kind of get my feet wet, kind of bouncing around and doing that. And then just decided like, hey, I'm going to, I want to do this. I want to hone in on one specific like outlet. And the Torch was something that I, had come to trust, as far as like a news outlet for wrestling, and just peppered Wade with emails. asking him like, hey, what's open? What can I do? What can I, how can I get started? And, it just kind of took email after email after email to kind of get him to say, all right, fine. Like, here, do this, do this. So one of the first things that I covered officially for the Torch was the first Mae Young Classic. So I covered I think it was like 2 or 3 weeks of that tournament. And, that just is what kind of got me rolling officially with the Torch. And so I picked up other coverage from there. I covered 205 Live for a lot of years, covered Raw. Raw was my beat for a long, long while. And then in the middle of the pandemic, we kind of talked and wanted to take kind of like my experience to the next level and kind of take more responsibility for the product. And so, he brought me on as an assistant editor. And so that's where I really like cut my teeth in terms of like, not just writing about wrestling because it's fun, but like making sure that, we're covering the right stories and covering them the right way. And we're organized with like what we're covering and how we're covering it. And so that was more of like, a business education on journalism and, the reality that has, in addition to just growing my skills as a writer in the pro wrestling space. So that was great. That was a great time. And, the business kind of called for us to go our separate ways. And I kind of wanted to try my hand at starting my own, organization and own kind of vision for how this industry can be covered on a week-to-week, day-to-day basis. That isn't necessarily, chasing proper news down. And so that's what Brass Ring Media is. And that's been open for about 6 months now. We've seen some really tremendous growth there, and it's been a blast, and we've got a really great team. And it's just, it's been awesome to kind of step out on my own and do that with the support of Wade and everybody else at the Torch. So it's been really great, a really great environment to kind of come into our own in.
Now, I know Lavie's got a bunch of questions. We'll obviously have a bunch more for you too, but I'll hand it over to Lavie.
Oh. So, Zach, we always talk about mergers and acquisitions, and you had a big one, a very beloved one this week was announced. Now, I'm going to challenge myself because I'm always struggling over the word, so I appreciate if you correct me. Your acquisition of Puroresu Monthly. How did I do?
Yeah, good. But flip the words. Monthly Puroresu. Yes.
Well, okay. So I got the pronunciation right. That's not the easy part. Okay.
Just the word. Yeah, that's okay. We'll let it slide this one time. But yeah, so that was a really fun kind of deal to work with. I had done some freelance writing for them a few different times throughout their existence throughout the last 5 years, and just kind of kept touch with what they were doing and how they were growing. And, just like any other, I feel like just like any other kind of like transaction like this, like the stars just aligned at the right time and with all the pieces kind of in place. They had some leadership changes over there that, and they needed, the brand to kind of fold into something that those leaders trusted. And, we kind of made our case for that and just kind of secured, the bag as far as that's concerned. And so, yeah, it gives Brass Ring Media a farther reach, globally, of course, with a lot of eyes, on the Japanese wrestling product these days. And it also, allows us to, keep MP, Monthly Puroresu, on the tracks and still doing what they do and giving Japanese wrestling the proper coverage. So, it's we are pausing at the moment as we kind of catch all the balls, and we're really excited to bring on a new editor at some point and really get the ball rolling here in the spring. So it's a really good opportunity to expand, and it's a brand that I think is synonymous with kind of how we cover wrestling at Brass Ring Media, longer form. And so it's a really good match.
So, and I'm glad you abbreviated MP. I think I'm going to go for that from now on. At its core, it was a print publication. So do you see it returning to print, or more like just a brand that'll exist digitally and sort of be dispersed in different ways, or that's all up in the air at the moment?
Well, it's definitely up in the air in a moment, but I don't envision it going back to a print, a print type of platform. The print products that they put out are really phenomenal. They're phenomenal reads. The pictures are great. They look really cool. But I think, like, for one thing, that the wrestling business and the Japanese wrestling business moves so fast that we need to be on a platform that can be updated quickly, and with information that can get to our readers quickly, so that we can serve them in the best way possible. And so it's not a knock on print or anything, but it's just the manner at which we want to make sure we can cover this. Like, it just proves itself out better in and on platforms that can be manipulated and disseminated quicker. So yeah, never say never, of course, but at this point, that's not part of that won't be really part of our plan.
Yeah, no, it makes sense. Like, the print industry has changed so much and it's so challenging. I still feel like that there's certain appeal to the niche. My kids are 9 and 13, and they actually are interested in magazines. Like, there's something unique to them and exciting. Like, my daughter likes like a crafting magazine, and my son loves like the Minecraft type stuff. And just like having that physically on the newsstand in hand, there's something to it. Now, one more very technical question, and then I'll leave you alone.
No, this is great.
One thing I've been curious about, because of course there's certain articles and interviews that were like of the moment, but having a number of issues, there was content that was evergreen. In first publishing as a print publication, do the rights afford you to say, like, I can take the evergreen articles and pictures or whatever it might be and like publish, let's say, like a hardcover book, or it doesn't translate in that way?
Oh, I think it translates in that way. Yeah, eventually, once we can get to that point. I mean, yeah, a lot of the articles are evergreen. They're either, what they did, what MP's done a great job with over the years is some like really hard hitting, in depth, but to your point, evergreen interviews with top talent, from the Japanese pro wrestling space, whether it's New Japan or Noah or other organizations. And so I think those always play, and we'll, try to, use pieces of those articles still, as we write current, if there's a current, just for example, if we're writing a story about Okada, and his, the impact that he's made since coming over from New Japan, we've got a really nice backlog of Okada stuff that we can use to enhance like the current pieces that we write. So yes, I think we'll be able to, lean into the history of MP and the work that they've done there. And then, hopefully, down the road, if the business of it makes sense, get something more like, hard and fast into people's hands that they can enjoy. Because I agree with you fundamentally. Like, I still enjoy getting certain things like in the mail, like, or going to the store and like pick them up, and it's rare these days for sure, but there is like an element to that that's enjoyable. So yes, I would say that's likely on the horizon at some point, perhaps.
Yeah, I go through cycles with the print stuff where I'm like, do I really need it? And then like PWI will send me something that's like a really cheap subscription. I'm like, okay. And then I'll let it lapse. And then just yesterday, actually, they sent me an offer for a 2-year subscription. That's a great deal. Not going to give away all their business practices, but I'm going to fill out like the little form with like credit card number, mail it in, and then 8 months later, I'll get my first issue. Like, I'm ready to embrace that a little bit. So, but also, you've published, I think it's your first book on Steve Austin. I'd love to, as an author myself. John is an up-and-coming author. We're anxiously awaiting the Hogan retrospective, covering those golden years. What was that process like in full? Like, when did you conceptualize it? How did you publish it? How happy were you with the results?
Oh my gosh, it was such a fun process. That's still going on right now, actually. but I loved it. I mean, I really did. And I mean, it was, as you guys know, it was, it was difficult. You know, there were points that I smiled, points where I wanted to cry, points where I wanted to scream and throw the computer out the window. So like, you really go through the full gamut of emotions when you're writing something, or at least I did. But I was really happy with the outcome. You know, I had a great partner, and Jonathan, and over at Hybrid Shoot for that published this. And, you know, we went back and forth on the concept for a long time. You know, like, it's really interesting to go back and think about like where like the pitch was initially when I made it to what the final product actually ended up being. Because there's certainly like a thread, you know, there that runs through, but it shifted and it morphed and it changed scope at certain points. And I'm glad that it did, because if it would have went the way that it went, you know, when it first started, I think it would have been just a lot tougher to accomplish. And it was really nice to have, you know, Jonathan and that team over there to kind of, you know, help focus the project. And once we had it focused, then it was really fun, because it came time to kick back and get organized and find all the, you know, the library of Steve Austin content and matches and promos. And man, yeah, I mean, like the summer of, 2021, which is when I kind of went through that part of writing the book, you know, watching everything. I'll never forget it. You know, I just had a new baby at that time. So it'd be, you know, 4 a.m. and she'd be having a bottle and we'd be watching, you know, the Hollywood Blondes against Ric Flair and Arn Anderson. Like, you know, it just was a really fun time to watch all that stuff. And then after that, you know, it came time to write it and really to kind of get it down on paper and get the, you know, the nuts and bolts done. And that was fun in its own way too. You know, like there were days where obviously you're super creative and you really feel like nothing can stop you. And then there's other days where it's like, boy, I can't type a page. If you were, you know, if you had a gun to my head, I couldn't do it. So it really was a fun process to kind of go through and manage. And, you know, nothing felt better than like hitting that last word and saving everything and passing it over to John. So, we took pre-orders for the book last year, and the electronic copies went out to all the pre-order folks late last year. And, you know, soon the hard copies are going to print and be available to everybody who pre-ordered, and available on Amazon and wherever you buy your books. So like another major hurdle here is coming up. Obviously that'll be fun. It'll be fun to hold that in the hand and, you know, get it into other people's hands and hopefully get their feedback and hopefully they enjoy it. And you know, it adds to their pleasure of watching wrestling and watching Steve Austin. But, yeah, it was a process. It was quite the process, but I wouldn't have traded it in for anything either. I really, you know, appreciated it and had a blast.
What's fun of having a book on Amazon is that every hour they re-rank the books. So like you have to be quick in taking a screenshot, but if you're in a ranking that you like, just grab it, you know.
Grab it. Okay. I'll make a mental note and grab that and never lose it.
Yeah. And I hope you reign atop the wrestling top 100 for years to come. But
thank you.
If there's that fleeting moment where you're ahead of Tyrus and his 7 versions of his 2 books, then take that moment. I think.
Oh, I'm screenshotting that for sure.
Yeah. His publishing success is like one of the most underreported stories in pro wrestling. It has to be one of the best-selling books of all time. It's just been on the number 1 for so long.
It's wild. Well, you know, I'm going to do my best to try to knock him off his perch. I don't know if I'll be able to, but we'll see.
Tyrus, Billy Corgan, Zach is coming for you.
Coming for you guys.
So, are you also involved in SESCOOPS still, or everything is Brass Ring Media?
Everything's Brass Ring Media now. Yeah, everything's Brass Ring Media. Yeah, we kind of I pulled back a little bit on SESCOOPS, and just for no other reason, just to focus on this. You know, we saw some really good growth right out of the gate, and just wanted to, you know, put my full attention on it and, you know, make sure giving it all the tender love and care that it needs. So yeah, it's full steam ahead with Brass Ring at the moment.
Yeah, so we're all alumni of the SESCOOPS family, but we love them very much.
Yes, we do.
So tell, entrepreneurship, going out, what do they call it? Investing in yourself. Sort of like, how did this all come about?
Honestly, it started with just, I want to do more longer form analysis on wrestling on a more regular basis. It's what I like to do. It's what I'm better at, I think it's just what I think I can bring to the table that people will enjoy more. I think, there's a lot of folks in the news aggregation space, and it's hard to make a mark there because there's just a lot of people doing it and doing it really, really well. And so, in terms of, and I always thought, oh man, it's hard to make an impact there if you're new, because it's just such a competitive space. And when I sat back and was like, yeah, but you know what, that's important, of course, but it's not really what I enjoy most about doing this anyway. I would much rather sit, and analyze a, Rock promo with Roman Reigns than, pull, 4, 5, 6 news stories out of that and churn those out. That's just my preference. That's just what I would prefer to do and how I prefer to spend my time. And so I was like, yeah, let's lean into that. Let's be, a daily kind of organization that reports on and discusses the news of the day and the news of the week in professional wrestling in real time. But let's do it from a longer form perspective. Let's have, instead of, reviews and results of Monday Night Raw, let's just ditch that altogether and have our Raw and SmackDown and NXT and AEW columns be, little 2 to 3 minute reads of a review of the show, bullet pointed out that you can easily, pull it up, get it in your email, read it every morning, and get a sense of what happened and why it was important or why it worked and why it didn't. Not just that A wrestled B and this was the outcome. And I just thought there was a space for that. And, adding into that, I've got a lot of podcast experience, thankfully, from my days at the Torch, and, an audience that thankfully, appreciates and enjoys the work that I do. And so, I felt like it was a good time to kind of that's there. And so you can make a little bit of an impact here if you just kind of try to dive in with both feet and don't hedge. And so that became Brass Ring Media. That became the project. And so our vision is to continue to cover the wrestling business in that way. So daily and regularly and in multiple places on multiple platforms, but in that longer form manner of analysis and less, reporting what Mercedes Moné said in an interview on a podcast. 49-year-old reacts to 26-year-old wrestling ring shocker. Quick here. Yes, less of that, right? I mean, and again, it's truly, it's not a knock on those pieces or that content. It's just, it's a, as you guys know, it's a hard space to crack into when, there are people that do it so well. And, I was like, man, why fight that tide? And it's not even my bread and butter anyway. So let's go a different direction and take a different perspective on that stuff. And, hopefully there's an audience for it. And so far there is.
Yeah. But it's nice when we have someone on like Brett Lauderdale and we're peppering him with questions, and then it comes out to be 23 headline pieces that get aggregated. So we take that too.
Yes. Yeah, of course. Absolutely. It's more of just, it's hard to break in and start something new in that area, because it is really competitive, as you know.
So let me turn over to John, who will take us to the news and moderate us so we don't talk over each other.
Great.
So NWA is in the news. Lavie, what is going on with them? Dothan, Alabama, which is obviously a big-time wrestling town, or used to be. What's going on with the NWA?
So first focusing on the Hard Times pay-per-view, like as I've been talking about for weeks, I think this was a big win for them. Really smart venue selection for us old school, no holds barred fighting fans. Site of UFC 12, which looks boss on TV because it's not such a big venue, but two sides, or maybe even one side, is sloped. So when you're shooting it that way, it looks pretty full. So like any wrestling attendance, we had a bit of controversy. So the Torch and others had reported 1535, and Kerry Morton, who also not only is a wrestler for them, but is in charge of their social media, reported that it was 1658. So no matter what, certainly a win there. And sort of like NWA has to play Moneyball in this way, sort of find these venues or history, which isn't so easy, where wrestling doesn't come through as much as it used to, right? WWE said that they're not going to be going to the smaller markets as much anymore. We read Meltzer saying that AEW is trying to stay away from these smaller, mid-sized markets to increase their attendance, which I think is a big mistake. So you can have like semi-national promotions like NWA come in and make it work. And smartly, they announced immediately a follow-up pay-per-view in December in the market as well.
Zach, what do you think about that? NWA drawing a big crowd like that. It almost seems like, no way, it can't happen. But it seems like it did.
It seems like it. I heard, 1,600, even 1,535 or whatever it was. It was like, whoa, that's interesting. And I mean, I think it's smart for them to play in that space, to be honest. Like, it's good if when you're a wrestling promotion, it's good to kind of know your place, like in the market, so that you don't overshoot and you don't undershoot, but you got to be who you are. And, I think that it can be sometimes humbling to admit to yourself, if you're a promoter or owner of a promotion, like, all right, well, man, maybe we're not the company that's going to be running, Barclays Center. That maybe it's a bitter pill to swallow, but it's a lot better to have a full crowd of 1,500 than 1,500 in a wide, open, cavernous, big arena that you really have no business being in. And so I think that this is a good strategy for the NWA if they want to continue to be, a niche product that they try to slowly win over fans. I think like the model for them can mirror what, Impact Wrestling TNA did to kind of make their, bit of a comeback in terms of not necessarily like ticket sales or ratings, but just critical acclaim and like their shows feeling, like they make sense and feeling like they fit with where they are. And so I think this is it's a smart move. I think you'll find if you go to some of these like smaller markets, you'll find some really interesting venues. It'll make the product look different. It'll make your shows look different. If they can find, unique places to run and to have shows, I think that completely is beneficial for them. So, NWA is what they are, but I think when you look at this, in a vacuum, it's a good move and a step in the right direction for sure.
They do have some tapings coming up in Tampa as well in April. Lavie, they got anything else coming down the pike besides those shows?
So it depends how you count NWA because they have their affiliates now. So they're working out of these studios and local promoters who already have their own promotions, which I think, well, if they're going to do it, I think it's a smart way to go. I'm just not sure why they're doing it. Like, if these tapings aren't for a national audience, like, what's the point of it all? I don't want to sound negative. I'm just not sure yet what's the point of it all. I think that there is a point that, even if something they try and it doesn't work out, they're pointing towards something. I'm just not sure what that is. But I think that they're smart in terms of, I didn't even know that there was these many PBS local studios around the country, but it seems to be a relationship that they're mining, and a smart one because they already have like professional facilities, right? When you do local independent, you don't know what you're walking into, what the I certainly remember with like Evolve and Dragon Gate USA, right? Like in Brooklyn, the power would go out, and like Gabe Sapolsky would be like, "Sorry guys, we're going to be offline for a while." If you're in PBS Studios, you know that you're good, and you don't need that many people there to fill the place up. So for whatever reason they're doing it, the way they're doing it, I think, is a smart way.
Now, as far as New Japan Pro Wrestling is concerned, I know they have the big Resurgence show coming up. They have the big Chicago show coming up. Are you surprised at some of their attendance, Lavi? Because it seems like they're actually drawing pretty good right now, given the fact that being New Japan fan, they lost their two best guys, Okada and Osprey, but somehow they're still drawing. Are you surprised at what's going on here, Lavi?
So right, so with the Chicago, I made a fool of myself. Right, like, at first I was very bleak on like, why you booking this big venue, and then they were like super hot out of the gate. That seemed to be the fans, and then the second run was like ticket brokers were like, hey, we don't want to miss out, so they bought a ton of tickets too. Those seem to be sitting in the resale now. They're just over 5,000, and that's probably where they'll stick. Like our friends at Wrestle takes points. 65 tickets sold in the last 7 days. So this could pick up. It's not till April, more than a month away as we record this. Now, in Ontario, California, I think we're trying kind of a big venue, but probably not that expensive venue in comparison for to a big market. Thus far, it's just under 1,500 tickets sold, but it's not till May. So they have it set up for about 3,000 tickets. So like, if you're flying people in, I know from Japan to California isn't as bad as the East Coast, but if you're only going to do 2,000 in a big building like this, I don't know, if it's as worthwhile, like it's compared to Long Beach, which is just 2,000 people. Sometimes I think that when they were in Times Square and they were in a venue that just seated 800-900 people, but they charged a lot, that might be the best model to go with. But if there's more Chicagos out there, then it's a good way to go.
Zach, what do you think about that with New Japan? Like, how are they drawing 5,000 people when they just lost their top guys? Seems almost backwards. Like crazy.
It is a little backwards for sure, but I think you also have to look at that card too. I mean, I don't know if that card is going to be the norm for these New Japan shows moving forward. I mean, you've got Jon Moxley on the card. He's wrestling Tetsuya Naito. It's a huge match. I mean, that's a really big match anywhere. So it being on the show, I think really enhances the buzz for it in Chicago. And it's not a match that you're going to be able to put on every week or every month or every few months here. So, I think you do have to look at there. Mustafa Ali is also on that card. And so again, I don't know if he's going to be like a regular New Japan talent. He's a Chicago guy. There's certainly some interest there in terms of seeing him in the New Japan promotion. So they're going to leverage that. And I think that is driving some of this business. So I think that on these shows in the United States, there are some, not tricks, but like just promotional avenues that New Japan can go down that can like cushion the blow of losing an Okada and a Will Ospreay and a Jay White. I still think that New Japan collectively has an issue with their star power, and priority for them this year is going to be to make new stars and to hope that some of the guys that they had coming up, the Shodonos and that class turns into something. And they really need that to happen because, this wasn't just one top guy. This was really, 3 top guys that left the company full time in less than a year. And so, I mean, that's a blow for anybody. But we'll have to see how it goes. But I think as far as the Chicago show and some of these bigger US shows, they're able to kind of pull some different levers to make those, pop a little bit more. They still have the same issue though.
Yeah, it's true. You can squeeze Mox in here, Mustafa Ali,
Yep.
Dolph Ziggler, I guess, Nick Nemeth, maybe even Riddle. I don't know how much
Riddle,
of a big draw
yep.
Riddle, but you have those guys that you can kind of make it seem like you've got the big U.S. guys, ex-WWE talent, if you will.
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, and that's not a bad thing. I mean, that's good. You're going to do that, like for sure. Why not?
Yeah, why not?
But it kind of like puts duct tape over a big issue and doesn't fix it outright.
I know I've been to a bunch of New Japan shows without Okada. Man, it's like it's tough, to be honest.
It doesn't feel the same. It doesn't feel.
Yeah, it feels right. Weird. Yeah. Because when I really got into New Japan, God, it had to be about 14 years ago now. He was like on the come up, and then all of a sudden, him and Tanahashi was the feud. It's like, man, without him, but Tanahashi's still there, but he's older. It's a weird world right now, New Japan.
It is. And, they've been there before. They've been there before. They had,
Oh, yeah.
their dark ages, of that company kind of before Tanahashi came in, really. And, you know, they found him, and, the rest is history there. So it's not, unprecedented, but they got a hit on somebody or
Yep.
a couple people. And so, we'll see if they can.
Lavie, let's talk about your favorite promotion, possibly of all time, TNA. What's going on with Anthem?
Despite the claims online that I'm biased against them, because I have so much time to think about such things. They're a media company, and they announced the renewal of, we don't know the financials, but certainly in terms of prominence, one of their biggest deals, especially, over the air or cable or however it's delivered in India. But Anthem Sports announced that TNA has extended its partnership with Warner Brothers Discovery's premium sports channel, Eurosport India. The multi-year agreement brings exclusive weekly TNA content to viewers throughout India, Bangladesh, Bhutan, Maldives, Nepal, Pakistan, and Sri Lanka. The announcement includes 8 new TNA Plus presented specials each year. Also features all new episodes of the popular Hindi language series Pelwani Patak, showcasing top highlights from the promotion's flagship TNA Impact series, and so on. So I think good to have a renewal. I think for a while I wasn't sure if they were still on there. It might have just been an off week, or maybe I missed it in their schedule, because historically everyone talked about like what a big deal the media rights were for TNA or Impact at the time in India, and that's changed over a bit. But they've been through these renewals with Eurosport, who seems to enjoy pro wrestling content at certain times, and I don't believe at the moment they have New Japan on there, but at certain times they've had New Japan on there, and when Ring of Honor was with Sinclair for a time, they were on there as well. So an important part of their mix. And of course, now we're looking at the name a lot more, although I was certainly familiar with him before. Ariel Schnerer is the person, VP of Content and Distribution, who was quoted in this media piece as well, who we now know as running TNA.
Now, as far as Jordan Grace is concerned, what's her status? Is she saying she's taking bookings outside of TNA, or is this just for WrestleMania weekend?
So that's a good question. I'd assume, and I haven't checked on Cage Match or anything, like if she regularly takes bookings outside TNA, but she did announce that she's going to be doing so on WrestleMania weekend. I guess it just speaks to what to do with a breakout star in TNA. Certainly through mostly her own efforts, I would say. She is really a well-known, important star and commodity in the world of pro wrestling, and TNA doesn't have the ability to capitalize on it any more than her appearing on the show as the champion. We saw her certainly break out to a whole new audience in WrestleMania and hold her own, really. To me, the highlight of the Women's Royal Rumble. But she needs a bigger platform, and now she'll get a nice windfall show by show in terms of maybe wrestling twice every day during WrestleMania weekend and selling her merchandise and whatever, sort of like kind of like a traveling carnival, right? Like an independent wrestler would. But is that really the best platform for her, or can something be worked out where she's loaned out to WWE more? But some of that might have really fell through with Scott D'Amore not being in charge of TNA anymore.
Now, Zach, what do you think about when TNA and other promotions run during WrestleMania weekend? I know it gives them a nice pop. There's so many crowds in the town, or so many fans in the town, so the crowd's a little bit more, a bigger crowd, if you will. Do you like that, or does it make you seem smaller that you're running during WWE's weekend, so to speak, or their week?
Well, it definitely makes you seem small. I mean, there's no question about that. But I do like it. I do think it's become a cool part of the week for WrestleMania. So it's kind of like it's a bit of a double-edged sword if you're a promoter, because if you kind of glob on to WrestleMania weekend, you're just you're advertising that we're less than. But at the same time, I mean, like, the attention of the wrestling fan and of the wrestling world is on that city and on that area and on that event. So, it makes perfect sense to do that. And I think, I think it's smart. Again, this comes down to, knowing who you are as a wrestling promotion. So I don't fault promoters at all for kind of using that to try to, get good buy rates and bring in some cool talent because they know they're going to be able to sell more tickets. And, I think it just creates a pretty cool environment for whatever the WrestleMania host city is. And I think it's a good opportunity for wrestlers too, to go in and, make good money. There's a lot of places to work. You're in one area, so it's good for the talent. So yeah, it's a lot of thumbs up and a lot of reasons to keep doing it. If you're AEW, you don't want to be doing that. I think, you don't want to be running right there because you're, a second national promotion. And it's just, I think that would be a bad decision for them. But for even like the highest level indies, I think it's a smart move that can get some good exposure.
Want to mention TNA also has Under Siege Friday, May 3rd, and a TV taping Saturday, May 4th. The Washington Ave Armory in Albany, New York. Tickets on sale Saturday, March 16th at 10 a.m. Lavie, what about MLW? Because it seems like maybe it might be a little bit of hyperbole, but are they breaking records over at MLW?
Right. So the Melrose Ballroom, I think I always say I need to look up their capacity, but I think it's under 1,000. If I'm wrong, then
it's not that big of a venue. It is awesome in there, but it's not that big.
Yeah, and yeah, right. It's a great venue. When I asked Brett Lauderdale about running there, of course, they've been there multiple times, but then it's expensive also, relatively compared to some other venues, from what I understand. But if you sell out all the tickets, and you take the win. And if this is MLW's record-breaking stand in New York, then you promote that too. What do they say? When you're older, you say, I'm old enough to remember. I'm old enough to remember going to their show, and I forgot if it was upstairs or downstairs in the Hammerstein Ballroom or in the the other room where they taped Raw. But I remember being there in the balcony, and the attendance seemed pretty good for that show. It definitely wasn't sold out, but it was a lot of fun. My friend remembers it as actually going to ECW. He has no recollection of going to MLW. So it tells you about the branding of MLW at the time. So they sold this show out, and then they were also taking a little bit of a victory lap with Philadelphia. John, you've been there many times where you could put some seats out, take some seats away, call it a sellout, and so on. But from what I understand, that some of those shows have done well too. So you take what you can. I think this is all small change compared to the 20 million windfall, but certainly iteration by iteration, as they grow. And they have sometimes a little bit of branding is confusing. I'm sure you've all got the email today about a show in New York, and it's simulcast on YouTube and beIN Sports. And I was like, didn't they just run New York? And it was, whatever they taped it there, it wasn't clear there. So there's always that brand confusion. But of the shows that they actually have coming up, March 29th in Tampa and St. Pete, and I think that's a smart venue. It reminds me of NWA running, Alabama or wherever, because it's a historic venue. It's not too large, but it's old, but it looks good on TV. Then, running Chicago, they announced it initially as the fastest ticket sold in Chicago. Sometimes that language, it makes people doubt, because there's still I haven't checked recently, but when I checked and they announced that, it was in the second or third row, there were still tickets left. So have sales been so slow that you're announcing that this is the fastest selling ticket in the last week? Sorry, I don't mean to be negative. I'm just critiquing it and looking at it. And then June 1st in Atlanta. But, given the size of these venues, and I think it's smart also, they're venues that if you don't draw well, you can sort of not set it up that much, or corral it to a certain space. But if you suddenly get hot and you're doing well, Cicero Stadium looked like $1 million when they were a hot promotion with Condra, the Von Erichs, and people were throwing stuff in the ring. I was like, this is the second, I don't know if AEW was around yet, but like to me, I was like, this promotion will reign forever, and then things fell through.
Zach, with MLW, where do you rank them? Are they the third promotion out there? Where do you kind of put them in the grand scheme? Obviously, WWE 1 and then AEW 2.
Yeah, I put them at 4. For me, behind TNA right now, and just they've got good momentum. But I just think right now, the TNA show itself, like the product is just a little bit better. And I also think that TNA right now is easier to follow for a fan that wants to pick up, TNA. You can follow that pretty easily. MLW, I think, yes, you can watch it on YouTube, and yes, be in sports and that stuff. But their big events, I think it's hard to track down. When you can actually see the matches that take place on those shows, they don't always air live, so it's a little bit of a harder kind of product to connect with. You really have to put an effort in to figure out when is everything happening. So yeah, I put them in 4th. But that's, again, it's not a bad place to be, and I think they know where they are and what they do and what they need to do to serve their audience and serve their fans. So yeah, they're not going to be competing with WWE or AEW anytime soon, but that's okay. I don't think that they're necessarily trying to directly.
Now, as far as maybe some unofficial rankings, Lavie's number 3 promotion is GCW. Lavie, what's going on with GCW? Because New Jersey might be getting something big, according to Brett.
Yeah, and it's not just because Brett returns my DMs even when I didn't give him a heads up of some news breaking on the show once. So he's a forgiving man too. But John, I'm going to throw this back to you because I'm trying to read the tea leaves and figure this out. As a Jersey guy, I feel like you have you could probably guess this better. So Brett had tweeted out a few days ago, huge GCW New Jersey news coming soon. Not allowed to say anything yet, so consider this an exciting announcement that an exciting announcement is coming. So what I'm thinking about, and let me know if the venue is already closed and I seem like I'm off, but loving ECW, New Jersey, what about the Asbury Park Convention Center in the summer?
That's exactly when he put that out. Exactly what I was thinking, because I live not too far. I live down the street, and I've called them and said, "Hey, is any wrestling coming to the town?" And they said actually a bunch of promoters, and they wouldn't say who or when or anything, but they said a bunch of promoters had been calling them about running the building because it hasn't been ran in a while. I guess they did some reconstruction, did some other stuff. So I don't even know if it's officially back open to the public and back open to do this. But I did ask them, and they said, "Yeah, we actually have been getting wrestling promoters calling to see about running the venue." So I think honestly, it's an awesome venue. It's perfect for wrestling. So if you're not calling and you're a promoter and you're running New Jersey, you should rethink it, because I feel like the Asbury Park Convention Center is an awesome building.
Yeah, so one story I remember is I'm a yeshiva kid, so kind of a sheltered background. And one day I'm in class and I see a classmate leading the torch. And to me, it was oh my God. So we ended up becoming friends. And he grew up in Deal, New Jersey, which is the town over. Yep. Kind of a wealthy area and so on. And he and his friend had crossed into Asbury Park, and they went to I don't know if it was ECW's pay-per-view or just a taping or something and their stories, they were still recovering. The stories were crazy. So it's just a historic venue.
Absolutely. Zach, do you know anything about the Asbury Park Convention Center, that scene?
I don't know. I mean, I don't know a ton about it. I know it's a kind of an iconic venue for the area for sure. And God, I want to say I've seen, and somebody correct me if I'm wrong on this, but I want to say that I've seen a video of Springsteen playing there before.
Oh yeah,
either on it might have even been on the Today Show or something crazy like that. So that's what I know of the venue. But here's the thing: I love when GCW does stuff like that. And so if that's the announcement, if that's the news, that's cool. I think are creative with what they do and where they run and how they run, and they don't hit on everything, but this would be a cool get. A cool get. And like you said, I mean, it's a great venue, historic venue, perfect for wrestling, and really perfect for that brand. So here's to hoping.
They've got a ton of shows coming up, right, Lavie? I mean, even with the collective, they got a lot coming up.
Yeah, so now that I'm looking at it here, I'm kind of like piecing the things together. Oh, and before we move on, I just wanted to mention, Zach, you're right, in terms of Springsteen. I think that's where before he goes on a tour, since it's close to his house, they actually rent out that venue, and that's always where they do like the rehearsals.
That's okay. That makes sense. Yeah. I knew it was something to that effect. But yes, okay, that makes sense.
And I'm a huge Springsteen person, by the way. So, so actually, now that we're like connecting the dots here, they're running right Atlantic City this weekend, which actually, you know, if it's like a deathmatch tournament or something special, like they've done really well. I think since like they've been in the carousel room, which was like gorgeous, you know, the draping and so on, and now they're like in the old bus depot. and they, you know, sometimes they've done well there, so I'm not blaming it all on that, but like they haven't done that well there recently, especially, I mean, when it's warmer, obviously they do better. But if they're holding an announcement and it's going to be in the same region, right? Like you want to have people attend first. So like probably it'll come after this weekend as we announce it. Harpo's, they're looking good. I was thinking about it, like I probably thought they were doing better there than they are, maybe, because I think it's like sloped seating. So there's not 4 ways around the ring. So when I see 7 or 8 rows sold, I don't know if that's 4 ways around. But certainly Rochester in a smaller venue, they're looking good. The collective, I don't look at as much show by show, but certainly Janela's Spring Break shows always do well. You know, for the culture, Big Gay Brunch. You know, it's a smart win in talking about WrestleMania weekend and other weekends where you gather. Really smart for GCW to be there. A great way to continue like building up, you know, their you know, knowledge of the brand. One of their strongest venues, Ukrainian Culture Center in LA, coming up in April, as well as you know, in I think it's Arizona, breaking GCW. They happen to be in like the same, like I guess it's business complex, like which looks quite, you know, quite small, where they take Breaking Bad. So like a little bit of an appeal there, right? When you have so many shows, you need like a little bit of a catch. And then into Tampa on May 3rd for a show as well. So I think, you know, especially once the collective stuff is over with, you'll see like a lot of announcements because they're running like so regularly now.
All right, let's wrap this bad boy up. Head towards the plugs. You can follow me on Twitter and X at 2Man Power Trip. Zach, we'll do you first. What do you got going on?
Thanks so much. And guys, listen, it was a blast being on with you. Hopefully we can do it again soon, and hopefully can reciprocate and can have you guys on our stuff. But we've got a lot going on. We just a couple weeks ago, at the beginning of February, launched new live podcasts on the Brass Ring Media YouTube channel. So we are live on that channel Monday through Thursday, twice on Thursday, actually. So please head over to Brass Ring Media on YouTube and subscribe. Hit the notification button so you know when we're putting up new videos and you know when we are live. We cover a ton of different wrestling topics, a ton of different wrestling promotions on those live shows. So you'll get a really nice mix of pro wrestling analysis and content if you give that a shot. So search Brass Ring Media on YouTube. Also, we've got a daily Substack newsletter that we put out with a variety of different long form analysis columns and features and reports and reviews on wrestling. And that's everything from, you know, we'll have some New Japan Cup stuff drop over the weekend. Of course, you know, Raw and SmackDown topics in AEW and a host of other things. But just, search Brass Ring Media Substack if you want to throw that in the Google machine, and we'll be the first thing that pops up. So hit subscribe. And then if you like what we do and you want to take it a little bit further, we have Brass Ring Media membership available via Patreon. So you can go to patreon.com/Brass Ring Media, and you can become a member, and that gets you a weekly member-only podcast, full access to the newsletter, including the free articles, and specialty paid columns and features. You get access to the Brass Ring Media Discord community, which is just a world of Brass Ring Media members talking wrestling, talking sports and entertainment, art, and anything and everything. So that's been a really fun perk. And then of course, like our pay-per-view and PLE review shows and things of that nature. But just head to patreon.com/Brass Ring Media and you'll know what we're all about. It's only $4. So hopefully you guys can give us a shot, and we'll do all we can to make sure that we earn your business on a month-to-month basis. So, and then last but not least, if you don't want to remember all that, just head to brassring_media on X, and you can get a refresher on how to subscribe to all of our stuff there as well.
Lavie, what about you? What do you got going on in this crazy world?
Yeah, thanks for the reminder on X. Still working on that. Follow me, Lavie Marg, LAPIEMARG. On LinkedIn, check out The Business of the Business. Zach is going to be getting an invite to that group in the next 3 minutes. And something I haven't promoted for a while, but certainly in the news, Trump Mania, the making of America's 46th. I'm going to put this out there, not to bring anyone into politics, and 48th president of the United States. So learn about Trump and pro wrestling. But I'm not doing another edition. So you can check out the 2 that are already out there.
All right. Thank you, Zach. Thank you, everybody out there, for listening. We'll see you right back here next week for a little business of the business. We'll see you next week.